when you're in the fairway, do you use a rangefinder? And all of a sudden, like, oh, yeah, absolutely use a rangefinder. And like, how many times you check the flag? Oh, like I'll zap the flag like 3-4 times, make sure I got the right yardage. And I like to know the front and the back. And when we're 150 yards away, we like to know, like we'll triple check to within the yard how far away we are. But when we're on the green, we have no idea if we're 20 feet away, if we're 30 feet away, if we're 50 feet away. Hey there, welcome to episode 2 of the Golf Never Sleeps podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Robillard, and my goal is to provide some of my learnings and my thoughts along the way to help you perform better in all aspects of golf, the way we practice, the way we play, to make the game a little bit easier and to help you shoot lower scores. So today what I want to talk about is there's a stat that most average golfers don't track that I think is one of the most important stats to track that can have a huge impact on many aspects of your game. And that stat is the length of the first putt you hit once your ball's on the green. So a lot of players that I work with and a lot of average golfers always complain that they struggle with speed control. That they have too many 3 putts, they don't get their long putts close, sometimes they hit their short putts past, and they just really struggle with speed control. And one of the first things I always ask them, usually the first thing I always ask them is, do they pace out their putts? And way too often, 70, 80, 90% of the time, people tell me they don't pace out their putts. And my rebuttal to that is, well, when you're in the fairway, do you use a rangefinder? And all of a sudden, like, oh, yeah, absolutely use a rangefinder. And like, how many times you check the flag? Oh, like I'll zap the flag like 3-4 times, make sure I got the right yardage. And I like to know the front and the back. And when we're 150 yards away, we like to know, like we'll triple check to within the yard how far away we are. But when we're on the green, we have no idea if we're 20 feet away, if we're 30 feet away, if we're 50 feet away. And that lack of knowing how far away we are is the number one root cause of, I think, why people struggle with speed control. If you had no idea how far away you were on the golf course ever, and you never checked, you wouldn't know how far your irons go or your driver goes. The same thing happens for putting. So I believe tracking the stat is very important for a few things. The easiest one is, for a lot of players, when I asked them, I said, okay, you're struggling with distance control. What length of putts do you normally have? And they don't even know how to answer that question. And then I might ask them, okay, well, when you warm up before a round, what length of putts do you warm up? And again, they usually give me an answer, I just kind of drop a couple balls and I just go to a couple of holes. And very quickly they start to see where I'm coming from, where all what they're doing with their putting is purely guessing. Imagine this scenario. Imagine underneath your score, every time you played, you wrote down the length of the first putt you had once you got on the green. And maybe for a little bit of context, you could just add if you hit the green in regulation or not. And I'll come back to why that's important in a second. At the end of 18 holes, you'll have a bunch of numbers on there. And let's say they're measured out in feet. 8, 36, 47, 12, 63, 2. And you'll start to see, wow, I actually hit a ton of putts from a ton of different distances. And you might start to say, wow, it actually looks like as you do this for 2, 3, 4 rounds, you have tons of putts, let's say outside 30 feet, and you never practice 30 footers before your rounds, and you never practice 30 footers in your practice. I know why your speed control struggle, or I know why you have speed control issues. Now that we bring some awareness to how long these putts actually are, we have something to go off of. If we want to dive in a little bit deeper, there's a difference between the length of putt when you hit a green and when you miss a green. Let's say I want you to look at the length of putts when you miss a green. That's actually going to tell us a lot about how good your chipping is. If the length of your first putt when you miss a green is 12 feet, 17 feet, 21 feet, 4 feet, 15 feet. I listed off 5 numbers there, and only one of them was inside 10 feet. And let's say you find out that 1 out of 5 times or 4 out of 5 times when you miss the green, your par putt's outside 10 feet. Based off of knowing the length of your first putt, you might be highlighting that you have a huge opportunity to shoot lower scores by making the first putt when you miss a green shorter. And what does that mean? It might be telling you that your short game, that your chipping when you miss greens is a weakness. Another thing that you can look at is, let's go back to the times that we do hit the green. You can start to look at those to find out, okay, on the first hole, that was a par 4 and I hit it to 75 feet. Hit the green in regulation, but I hit it to 75 feet. Yes, we hit the green. It's fantastic. But a par 4, they hit to 75 feet. There's a chance you obviously didn't hit that very close to the hole. And what knowing the length of first putt and tracking it might help highlight is that either you really struggle with your alignment and you keep missing way left or way right of the pin, or you have distance control issues where you're constantly coming up short or you're constantly going past. And again, I believe you can learn a lot of this just by tracking the length of putt that you have. So now let's go back to how this can actually help you make more putts. As you start to track this information, you can start to know, you'll start to find some tendencies. Let's say, as an example, you find when you hit the greens, you got a lot of 35 footers, or let's say 30 to 40 footers. Well, guess what? I think one of the most important yardages for you to work on, or one of the most important putts for you to work on before you go for a round, is 30 to 40 footers. There's not a lot of point of you hitting a lot of 20 footers or something around there if you just don't have them. And now that we have that awareness, I don't need you to spend 45 minutes working on them. But if you're the player that maybe only spends 5 or 10 minutes on the putting green before your round, spend it around the distances that you need to be around. As an example, I know, because I track roughly when I hit a green in regulation, I have between 20 to 30 feet. Sometimes it's in the 20s, sometimes it's in the high 20s, but it's a lot of 20 to 30 feet. So before I go for a round of golf, I'm constantly working on my speed control from 20 to 30 feet. The thing that I also know is that when I miss greens, my average length of putt when I miss a green is, let's say, somewhere between 7 to 15 feet. Do I wish that number was lower? Yes, I do. But that's what the data tells me. So before I go for a round of golf, I'll try to work on a lot of 10-foot putts and, let's say, 25-foot putts, really trying to get the feel of those, because the data has told me that I have those a lot when I play. One other thing I'll always do is I like to putt from fringe to fringe. And what I mean by that, every putting green is different sizes, but I try to find the longest putt that I can on that putting green and just roll a few and keep note of how far they are, just to challenge myself again to just continue to work on distance control or speed control my putting, even on some really long putts. I hope I don't have an 80-foot putt, but I know it's possible. And there's nothing worse than us getting on the golf course and having a really long putt, and we go, you know what, I've actually never really hit a putt over 20 feet on my putting green. So something to consider. I guess to kind of recap where we're at right now, everything I'm talking about is around tracking one number, and that's the length of the first putt you have once you're on the green. I think that you can break it up in between whether you hit a green or whether you miss a green, and that can help you find out, do you actually know how far your irons go? Do you actually know how far they go? Do you actually chip it that close to the hole? I think there's so many little things you can pull out of that from this one simple number. But more than anything, now back to helping you make more putts or helping you have better speed control when you putt, it should guide you on what length of putts you need to work on. Now, going back and putting my coaching hat on, imagine now going to a coach and you say you're struggling with your putting. And the coach asks you a couple of questions and you say, I don't know how long my putts are. I don't know. And you just give him a bunch of I don't knows. Or instead, imagine you're going to a coach and you say, I'm struggling with my speed control, and I know that a lot of my putts are 20 to 30 to 40 feet. And you might tell them that when I play other golf courses, I tend to struggle with speed control. But let's say you give that coach a little bit deeper detail other than just I 3-putt too much. You tell them, I know I have a lot of 40-footers when I play because I track it, and I really struggle with that pace. That you also could go to your golf coach with some data and say, hey, I've been tracking the length of my first putts, and I know that I always blame my putting, and that's something I need to work on. But when I miss the greens, I very rarely have putts inside 10 feet. I actually want to get off the drive range. I want to go work on my chipping because that's what the data on the golf course is telling me. I hope that this makes sense. I hope that it's something that you consider. And I hope it's something you just start tracking. Just start doing it for a few holes or do it for a couple of rounds and just see. You might be surprised how many putts over 30 feet you have. You might be surprised how many putts inside 10 feet you have. But having a specific number, some specific data, I think can really help go a long way in you being a lot more specific and mindful on exactly what you need to work on with your putting from what distances. Similar to how obsessive we are when we're back in the fairway about exactly what yardage it is to the pin. So this has been episode 2 of the Golf Never Sleeps podcast around my favorite stat to track, which is the length of your first putt. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have, if you do enjoy this episode or enjoy my other episodes, I hope you'll consider subscribing to be the first to know when I drop a new episode. Have a great day and happy golfing.